August 14th, 1934. 9:23 a.m. Word spread through Harlem like wildfire. Dutch Schultz, the most feared white gangster in New York, the man who'd been trying to take over Harlem's numbers rackets for 3 years, had just put a price on Bumpy Johnson's head. $25,000. In 1934, that was the price of 5 houses, 10 cars, enough money to set up a family for life. And all you had to do was kill one man. Bumpy Johnson, 29 years old, chief enforcer for Madame Stephanie St. Clair. The man who'd been waging guerrilla war against Schultz's operation since 1931. The man who'd already killed or kidnapped more than a dozen of Schultz's men. $25,000. Cash. No questions asked. The word came from Schultz's top lieutenant, Bo Weinberg, who'd spread it through every speakeasy, every gambling den, every corner where criminals gathered. Dutch wants Bumpy Johnson dead. 25 grand to whoever brings proof. By noon, every hustler, thug, and desperate man in New York knew. And Bumpy? He was at home on 139th Street when his lieutenant, Willie Whispers Jackson, burst through the door. Bumpy, Schultz put a bounty on you. 25,000. Bumpy looked up from his newspaper. Didn't even blink. 25,000. That's what they're saying. Bumpy nodded slowly. Folded the newspaper. Stood up. Get my suit. The gray one. Whispers stared at him. Your suit? Bumpy, did you hear what I said? There's a $25,000 bounty on your head. Every killer in New York is looking for you. I heard you. So what are you going to do? Bumpy adjusted his tie in the mirror. I'm going to get breakfast. August 14th, 1934. 11:47 a.m. Small's Paradise. 135th Street and 7th Avenue. It was Dutch Schultz's favorite restaurant when he came to Harlem. The place where his men met. Where they conducted business. Where they felt safe. Everyone knew it was Schultz territory. And that's exactly where Bumpy Johnson walked. Alone. No bodyguards. No crew. No weapons visible. Just Bumpy in his gray, three-piece suit, fedora tilted just right, walking down 135th Street like he owned it. People on the street saw him, recognized him, and their eyes went wide. That's Bumpy Johnson, someone whispered. Doesn't he know there's a bounty on him? Where's he going? Small's Paradise. Schultz's place. He's crazy. He's walking right into it. Word spread ahead of him, faster than he walked. By the time Bumpy reached Small's Paradise, half of Harlem knew what was happening. He pushed open the door at 11:52 a.m. The restaurant went silent. 40 people inside. Musicians, waiters, diners, and at a corner table, 4 of Dutch Schultz's men. Bo Weinberg, Lulu Rosenkrantz, Abe Landau, and Marty Krompier, the same men who'd spread the bounty. They saw Bumpy walk in. For a moment, maybe 3 seconds, nobody moved. Then Bumpy walked straight to the bar, sat down on a stool, took off his fedora, placed it on the counter, and ordered coffee, 2 eggs, sausage, toast. His voice was calm, steady, like he was the only person in the room. The bartender, a man named Eddie who'd worked at Small's for 10 years, stood frozen. You want breakfast? That's what I said. But, Bumpy, Schultz's men are right there. Bumpy didn't turn around. Didn't even glance at the corner table. I know where they are. Now, give me my breakfast. Eddie's hands shook as he poured the coffee. At the corner table, Bo Weinberg leaned toward Lulu Rosenkrantz. Is he serious? He just walked in here. Alone. Does he have a death wish? Abe Landau stood up, hand moving toward his jacket, where his gun was holstered. I'm going to collect that 25 grand right now. Bo grabbed his arm. Wait. Wait for what? He's right there. Something's wrong. What's wrong is he walked into the wrong restaurant. Bo shook his head. No. Think about it. He knows we're here. He knows about the bounty. And he walked in anyway. Alone. That means one of 2 things. What? Either he's got backup we can't see, or he doesn't care. Lulu leaned forward. What do you mean he doesn't care? I mean, maybe killing him here right now is exactly what he wants us to try. The table went quiet. Because Bo was right. This wasn't normal behavior. This wasn't how someone with a bounty on their head acted. This was a message. Bumpy's breakfast arrived at 12:03 p.m. 2 eggs, sausage, toast, coffee. He ate slowly, methodically, like he had all the time in the world. The restaurant stayed silent. Everyone watching. Schultz's men at their table. Bumpy at the bar. 40 people holding their breath. Then without turning around, Bumpy spoke. Loud enough for the whole room to hear. $25,000. That's what Dutch is offering for my head. Silence. Anyone here want to collect? Nobody moved. Because I'm right here. No bodyguards. No weapons visible. Just me. Eating breakfast. He took a sip of coffee. So if you want that $25,000, come get it. Still, nobody moved. But here's what you should know first. Bumpy set down his coffee cup. The moment you pull that trigger, and assuming you actually kill me, which is a big assumption, you'll have about 3 minutes before my crew gets here. Maybe 5. They're watching this restaurant right now. Watching every door. Every window. They know I'm in here. They know Schultz's men are in here. He picked up his toast. Took a bite. So you kill me. You collect the bounty. And then what? You think you're walking out of Harlem alive? You think Dutch Schultz is going to protect you from every friend I have in this neighborhood? From Madame St. Clair? From the 200 people who work for us? Bumpy turned now. Looked directly at Bo Weinberg's table. Bo, you're a smart man. Do the math. $25,000 sounds good. But is it worth starting a war that'll cost Dutch millions? Is it worth turning all of Harlem, every street, every corner, into a battlefield? Bo said nothing, because that's what happens if you pull that trigger. Not just my crew, not just Madame St. Clair's people. Every black man in Harlem who's tired of Dutch Schultz trying to take over will see this as an excuse to fight back. And you know what it can't do? Bumpy stood up now, slowly, deliberately. He can't occupy Harlem. Not permanently. Not without an army. You know why? Because his men don't blend in. They can't walk these streets during the day without being spotted. And the moment they're spotted, they're targets. He put money on the counter. More than enough to cover his breakfast. So here's my message to Dutch. Tell him, I'm not hiding. Tell him, I'm not running. Tell him if he wants me dead, he can try. But it's going to cost him a lot more than $25,000. Bumpy picked up his fedora. Put on his head. Enjoy your lunch, gentlemen. And he walked out. 12:14 p.m. 22 minutes. That's how long Bumpy Johnson sat in Dutch Schultz's favorite restaurant, with 4 of Schultz's top men watching him, with a $25,000 bounty on his head, and nobody touched him. By 1 p.m., the entire underworld knew what had happened. Bumpy Johnson had walked into Small's paradise, Schultz's territory, with a bounty on his head, ordered breakfast, ate, and walked out alive. The reaction was split. Some people thought Bumpy was crazy, reckless, that he'd gotten lucky and wouldn't be lucky twice. Others thought he was a genius, that he'd just sent the most powerful message possible. You can't intimidate me. Dutch Schultz? He was furious. When Bo Weinberg returned to Schultz's office in the Bronx and told him what happened, Schultz exploded. You had him right there, and you let him walk out. Boss, it was a setup. He wanted us to try. So what? So, if we'd killed him there, in front of 40 witnesses, in the middle of the day, it would have started a war we couldn't control. We're already in a war. Not like this. Not with all of Harlem united against us. Schultz paced, thinking, because Bo was right. Bumpy's move had been brilliant. He'd walked into the lion's den, and by doing so, he'd exposed the lion's weakness. Schultz couldn't kill him in public without consequences. Couldn't make a martyr out of him. Couldn't risk uniting all of Harlem against the white gangsters trying to take over. So the bounty stayed. $25,000. But nobody collected, because everyone now understood. Killing Bumpy Johnson wouldn't end the war. It would start one that couldn't be won. But here's the truth. Bumpy Johnson wasn't fearless because he was crazy. He was fearless because he understood the game better than anyone else. The war between Bumpy and Dutch Schultz had started in 1931, 3 years before the bounty. Dutch Schultz wanted to control Harlem's numbers rackets, the illegal lottery that made millions. Madame Stephanie St. Clair, the numbers queen, refused to surrender, and she'd hired Bumpy Johnson as her chief enforcer. For 3 years, Bumpy and his crew of 9 men had waged guerrilla warfare against Schultz's organization. They couldn't match Schultz's muscle. Schultz had 50 men, maybe 100, plus police, plus politicians. But Bumpy had something Schultz didn't. He had Harlem. As Bumpy's wife Mamie would later write, Bumpy and his crew of 9 waged a guerrilla war of sorts, and picking off Dutch Schultz's men was easy since there were few other white men walking around Harlem during the day. Think about that. Schultz's men, white, Italian, Jewish, couldn't move freely in Harlem during the day. They stood out. They were spotted immediately, and the moment they were spotted, Bumpy's crew knew where they were. From 1931 to 1935, 5 years, more than 40 people died in that war. Schultz's men would disappear, turn up dead in alleys, in trash cans, in the Hudson River. Numbers runners would be kidnapped, held for ransom, sometimes released, sometimes not. Policy banks would be bombed, burned, shut down. It was brutal, bloody, expensive, and Schultz couldn't win. Oh, he controlled pieces of Harlem. He had influence. He had protection from corrupt cops and politicians. But he couldn't fully control the neighborhood, because Bumpy wouldn't let him. Every time Schultz thought he'd won, Bumpy would strike back. Another body, another bombing, another message, and the $25,000 bounty. That was Schultz's desperation. If he couldn't beat Bumpy with force, maybe he could buy his death. But even that didn't work, because Bumpy had done something Schultz never expected. He turned the bounty into a weapon. Here's what Bumpy understood that Schultz didn't. Fear is a tool, but so is fearlessness. By walking into Small's paradise, by sitting down, ordering breakfast, eating in front of Schultz's men, Bumpy had accomplished 3 things. First, he'd shown that he wasn't afraid, that the bounty meant nothing, that threats didn't work on him. Second, he'd put the pressure back on Schultz. Now everyone was watching, waiting. Would Schultz actually kill Bumpy? Or was the bounty just talk? Third, he made it harder to kill him. Because now, if Schultz's men did kill Bumpy, it wouldn't look like justice or strategy. It would look like they'd been baited, humiliated, forced into action. And in the criminal underworld, perception matters. Bumpy knew that, so he kept doing it. Over the next 6 months, August 1934 to February 1935, Bumpy showed up everywhere Schultz's men gathered. Restaurants, nightclubs, gambling dens. Always alone, always calm, always visible. And the bounty? It stayed uncollected, because Bumpy had turned it into a joke, a symbol of Schultz's inability to control Harlem. $25,000, and he still can't catch Bumpy Johnson, people would say, laughing. Schultz's reputation suffered. His men grew demoralized. And in October 1935, Lucky Luciano, tired of Schultz's recklessness, tired of the attention he was bringing to organized crime, ordered a hit. October 23, 1935. Palace Chop House, Newark, New Jersey. 2 men walked into the bathroom where Dutch Schultz was washing his hands. They shot him 3 times. He died the next day, and the war for Harlem ended. Not because Bumpy killed Schultz, but because Bumpy had outlasted him. But survival came with a price. During those 5 years, 1931 to 1935, Bumpy lost friends, crew members, people who'd fought beside him. Some were killed by Schultz's men, shot, stabbed, beaten to death. Some were arrested, sent to prison, never came back. Some just disappeared, and Bumpy carried that weight. One night in 1936, a year after Schultz's death, Bumpy was sitting at the bar in the Red Rooster, drinking, alone. A young hustler approached him, 20 years old, full of bravado. Bumpy Johnson, I heard about you. I heard you face down Dutch Schultz, that you're the toughest man in Harlem. Bumpy didn't look up. Go away, kid. I want to work for you. I want to learn. I said go away. The kid didn't move. Why? You scared of fresh blood. Bumpy finally looked at him, and what the kid saw in Bumpy's eyes made him step back. You want to know what being tough means? Bumpy said quietly, it means watching 9 of your friends die over 5 years. It means carrying a gun everywhere, every day, because you don't know if today's the day someone collects that bounty. It means looking over your shoulder every minute, never trusting anyone completely, never sleeping well. Bumpy finished his drink. It means living with the knowledge that every decision you make might get someone killed, that every move you make has consequences. That fearless isn't about not being afraid. It's about being afraid and doing it anyway. He stood up, dropped money on the bar, Still want to be tough like me?" The kid said nothing. Bumpy walked out. Years later, decades after Bumpy's death in 1968, old-timers in Harlem would still tell the story. The story of the day Bumpy Johnson walked into Small's Paradise with a $25,000 bounty on his head, ordered breakfast, ate, and walked out alive. To some, it was proof that Bumpy was fearless, untouchable, a legend. To others, it was proof that he was smart, strategic, a man who understood psychology better than violence. But here's the truth most people missed. Bumpy wasn't trying to prove he was tough that day. He was trying to prove that Schultz was weak. Because the real battle wasn't physical. It was psychological. Schultz had put a bounty on Bumpy's head to show power, to intimidate, to send a message. And Bumpy had responded by showing that the bounty meant nothing, that threats were empty, that Schultz couldn't control Harlem no matter how much money he offered. That's genius. That's not fearlessness. That's strategy. And it worked. After Dutch Schultz died in October 1935, Lucky Luciano took over his operations. And Luciano, smarter than Schultz, more strategic, did something Schultz never did. He negotiated. He met with Bumpy, made a deal, gave Bumpy control of Harlem in exchange for 15%. That deal lasted 40 years. And it happened because Bumpy had proven during the Schultz War that Harlem couldn't be taken by force. Luciano understood that. Schultz never did. So in a way, that breakfast at Small's Paradise on August 14th, 1934, wasn't just about surviving a bounty. It was about setting up the future, showing Luciano, who was watching, always watching, that the smart move wasn't to fight Bumpy. It was to work with him. So what's the lesson? That sometimes the bravest thing you can do is the calmest thing. Walking into that restaurant, ordering breakfast, eating while 4 armed men watched. That wasn't recklessness. That was calculation. Bumpy knew that violence breeds violence. That if he'd walked in shooting, it would have started a bloodbath. But by walking in peacefully, by sitting down, ordering food, speaking calmly, he made it impossible for Schultz's men to act without looking weak. He turned the tables, made the hunters feel like prey, made the powerful feel powerless. That's strategy. That's psychology. And that's why, 89 years later, we're still talking about it. The breakfast at Small's Paradise had consequences beyond just Bumpy and Schultz. It changed how black gangsters in Harlem saw themselves. Before that day, many of them felt like they were always on the defensive, always reacting to white gangsters, always at a disadvantage. But Bumpy showed them something different. He showed them that you don't have to be the biggest, the strongest, the richest. You just have to be the smartest, the calmest, the most strategic. And suddenly, young black hustlers in Harlem started thinking differently. They started studying Bumpy, learning from him, emulating him, not his violence, but his psychology, the way he moved, the way he thought, the way he turned weakness into strength. That became Bumpy's real legacy. Not the bodies, not the violence, not the fear, but the example, the proof that intelligence could overcome muscle, that strategy could overcome numbers. That one man, if he was smart enough and brave enough, could stand up to an empire. From 1935 to 1968, 33 years, Bumpy Johnson ran Harlem. He made his deal with Luciano, built his empire, became a legend. But he never forgot those 5 years of war with Dutch Schultz. Never forgot what it cost. The friends he lost. The nights he couldn't sleep. The constant threat of death. When he died in July 1968, at Wells' restaurant, clutching his chest, falling into his friend Junie Bird's arms, his last words weren't about power or money. They were about Malcolm X. About regret. About wondering if he'd made the right choices. Because that's what happens when you live a life like Bumpy's. You survive. You win. You build a legacy. But you carry the weight of it forever. Every decision. Every death. Every moment of fear disguised as fearlessness. That breakfast at Small's Paradise? It made Bumpy a legend. But it also reminded him, every day for the rest of his life, that survival requires sacrifice. And sometimes, the price of fearlessness is the very thing that makes you human. Peace of mind. Small's Paradise closed in 1986. 52 years after Bumpy's famous breakfast. But old-timers in Harlem still remember where it stood. 135th Street and 7th Avenue. And sometimes, on quiet mornings, you'll see elderly black men standing on that corner, pointing, telling stories. Stories about the day Bumpy Johnson walked into Dutch Schultz's favorite restaurant with a $25,000 bounty on his head, ordered breakfast, ate, and walked out alive. Because some moments are bigger than the people who live them. Some moments become history. And that breakfast, August 14th, 1934, was one of them. If this story made you see courage differently, hit that like button. Subscribe. Turn on notifications. Drop a comment. Would you have done what Bumpy did? Or would you have stayed hidden? I read every single comment. Because in Harlem, intelligence was the ultimate weapon. And Bumpy Johnson mastered it.